is law. How can you connect social justice with literature in the absence of law? Father has to have written father, right? Literature and law are very deeply connected. I think it's appropriate to acquaint you with two statements of law. Very simple, I'm not making it complex at all. Just pay attention to this definition this is by Lyndon S. Johnson. He says, law is the great civilizing machinery. It liberates the desire to build and subdues the desire to destroy. And if war can tear us apart, law can unite us out of fear or love or reason or all three. Law is the greatest human invention. All the rest give me mastery over the world. Law gives him mastery over himself. Stone says, law is neither formal logic nor the embodiment of inexorable scientific laws. It's a human institution created by human agents to serve human aims. It's meant for us, you and me. It's an accepted norm that law does not tolerate anarchy. It protects life, liberty, individuality, and identity as recognized by the supreme law of this country, that is the organic constitution. It acts through constitutional concerns. Reverence for law is requisite in an orderly society. Sometimes there is a feeling to achieve the said purpose, law should be fully stable. I would like to choose to agree with Roscoe Pound, who says, law must be stable and yet cannot stand still. You must understand this sentence. Be stable, but don't suffer from stillness. Interpretation of organic law, that's constitution, has to be progressive and reflect a vision for the present. It is the duty of the courts on whom the duty is cast, and also the legislature which make the law. I am mobilized to state here that literature mentions the word law on many an occasion. Someone has sent me a book. It said Shakespeare mentions 276 times law. I'm not written here. Mere mentioning does not have impact on the aspect of social justice. The situations, the descriptive passages, characters, orientations, dialogues, spelt passions, poetical feelings, rhythms, and rhymes, and such passages contribute to the fundamental etymology of social science. It can be stated with certitude that the literature has delightful, dignified, and impactful relationship with social justice. It needs to be noted that as literature has many compartments, similarly, the concept of social justice encompasses number of aspects such as equality, empathy, mutual respect, inclusiveness, value of humanism, and human rights. I must tell you here, it's my duty. I'm not following any chronology. You know why? I personally feel as a student of literature, literature could not have any kind of boundary of chronology. I can speak about 21st century poem, I can go to the ancients. Who are you to control? You mean anyone? Let me first travel in the time machine to Emerson. He was not a poet that way, or a right novelist. He says, please remember this, it's very interesting. He says about ancients, all my best thoughts were stolen by the ancients. There are some young minds, I would like to explain this one. Whenever I think I'm great, I'm modern, then when I go deep, I find, yes, somebody has in the past 2000 years back has spoken that idea in a different way. They have stolen mine. Not that I am thinking like that. Look at the same, look at the statement. Now, we'll come to social justice. Let me go to the Greeks. The play Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus is quite revealing. But the playwright poses, this was one of the speakers who really gave emphasis, poses questions and makes the audience think slightly differently regarding the time when it was written. The dramatist may not be able to avoid the inevitable. He's not a modern man, but by posing questions, he desires the readers to be empathetic. If you are thinking of social justice today, you can't abandon empathy and drive on the futile march of social justice. That is why Aeschylus was putting questions. In Prometheus Unbound, the great romantic poet Shelley elevates the status of Prometheus, who had suffered for the benefit of humanity and raised the issue of justice by making the punished, the Prometheus, free. This redemption makes the reader feel that empathy for human causes requires different treatment. It also lays down that courage is the greatest virtue in a man, and capacity to suffer, not Christ-like suffer, but suffer, are absolutely essential to sustain the hunger to fight for social justice. And keeping in mind Hemingway's words, a man can be destroyed but not defeated. That is what exactly Mr. Ashwini Kumar and Mr. Mukul and Maheshwarji were trying to speak in a different way. I may be enlarging or precise, I know not. These words of Hemingway, I would like to convey. I feel they speak of transcendence of human spirit. While saying, I may caution that any struggle for social justice uses individual identity and dignity. In the ancient epic Mahabharata, emerges as a larger-than-life character who believes in Purushartha and fights for his honor and dignity till his death. Shakespeare treats King Lear, a man troubled within, as a dignified protagonist. He mourns, he's sad, but he does it. His sadness, his sorrow, his mourning is like that of a king, because he feels within, I am King Lear. In this context, one cannot forget Ibsen's powerful play, A Doll's House.
But in direct social terms, he makes the wife Nora to speak about her own relevance, individuality, and identity. It is so carefully crafted that it does not convey the fight for ego as a psychological hazard. It's a fight for social status, the essence of existence. Such other writings have made lawmakers and constitutional courts to confer equal status on women, ostracizing the patriarchal theory and abandoning condescending attitude. Why should you order your wife or daughter, go and get me a glass of water if the water glass is there? Impermissible. Not do it. I must add here that progressive interpretation of constitutional rights has responded to the paradigm shift in the social justice spectrum. I think that in the present context to refer to one of the vibrant sayings of Tagore, who speaks of individual freedom in a different way. I quote, "Man goes into the noisy crowd to drown his own clamor of silence. He is not killing his individuality, he is elevating it. You must understand it. The poet seems to say, it is the freedom, here is the dignity. This makes the recognition of social justice a beautiful aspect of humanity in literature. Environment is a part of social justice, no. It's a human right, it's a right to life. One, you see, now it is called environmental ethicality is expected from everyone. One has to sit in a time machine and move to be in the company of Wordsworth, whose acceptance of the principle to surrender to beauty of nature and having love, caution, and respect. He had accentuated on purity of nature as if he had anticipated the attitude of man to play with nature in 20th century and now. I may note here that in certain writings of D.H. Lawrence, his love and care for environment is reflectable. The ancient poet Kalidas has given immense emphasis on nature's concerns and the concept of environmental consciousness. That we will notice in Kumar Sambhav, where he says about Parvati, Shairadi Raja Tanaya Na Jajau Na Kastau. He brings a universalism in his image because like a river flows towards the sea and gets obstructed by a big stone or a small hill, it records. Similarly, Parvati was in such a dilemma, she almost recoiled after seeing Shiva. It is sometimes compared by people with Hamilton to be or not to be. That is the question, but that's in a different way. I have quoted you. Social justice is based on social equality. Now, I'll give an example. When America was suffering from slave trade and the nature and the torture to slaves, Abraham Lincoln in the year 1863 issued the Emancipation Declaration. It's worth mentioning that the Emancipation Declaration was issued by the president to change the perception of Europeans who were thinking about the war between the North and South in a different light. Lincoln was of the view that European attitude would change by such a declaration Since more than 1 million people in Europe had read Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's very, very moving book. I don't know how many of you have read. It clearly shows the effect of literature on society, and more so when people conceive of free society. Mr. Ashwini Kumar had talked about marginalization in a different way. Remember, marginalization and discrimination on the foundation of caste is basically a social disease. Authors in many structure or form bring in the inherent inequality and repulsive phenomenon in the system. The social stigma everywhere requires to be removed by the society, and this purpose is served by literature transforming people and by law. By literature transformation and by law imposition of punishment. It's necessary. Literature teaches the one attitude to have reflect the potentiality of freedom, freeing himself from the traditional chains. When one is free from the mental bondage, to destroy the corrosive cells of the system, serve the humanity and change the idea. That is what writers like Mulraj Anand and Martin Luther King Jr. proclaim, and that is what the courts have pronounced. Literature with its leisure brim encompasses and spreads in many a manner and style, incorporating the necessity of inclusiveness, elevation, and being sensitive to dignity and spiritual oneness, abandoning all kinds of separating discriminatory feelings and attitude. In this context, one recalls the most profound lines Lincoln has said. You see, Lincoln has declared the bill, the Emancipation Declaration, but he has to sought the support of the Congress. He spoke 2 lines. He says, "We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of art." If one doesn't accept it as poetry, then it is nobility of prose. Similarly, Lincoln at the Gettysburg speech, which we never lived to witness what's the impact. He says, and I'm deliberately quoting out the whole speech, 5-6 lines. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This touches every student of literature and every person who believes in equality, and not just the ideal of personal esteem as a significant aspect of social justice. Let me travel to Kidd's for a minute. Kidd's description of the miserable condition of Isabella is reflective of kind of socialism. Some call it Kidsian social empathy. In that last few decades, the progressive legislations would be pleasing kids in heaven.